The fight about Bach was, predictably, exhilarating. It was loud, intelligent, and entirely pointless, ending not with an answer, but with a shared silence, a comfortable quiet that felt more intimate than any of the conversation they'd shared. By midnight, Adrian found himself standing on Finn's porch. The moon low over the Atlantic, the air tasting sharply of frost. So Adrian said, wrapping his arms around himself. "Thank you for the pasta, and for proving that I still remember how to raise my voice." Finn was standing close enough that Adrian could feel the residual heat of his body. It was a necessary exercise. "You hold too much air in your chest when you talk now. It's better out than in. I'm a professional performer." "Finn, I have to control my air," Adrian retorted, but the edge was gone from his voice. "You're an artist, and last time I checked, art is about letting go of control when it counts." Finn challenged, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Why did you never visit, not even for a holiday in 10 years? It wasn't just the orchestra contract." The sudden, stark question felt like a needle dropped on a delicate record. Adrian stiffened. "It was the contract, and the travel, and the need to establish myself," Adrian insisted, turning away to look at the dark outline of the lighthouse in the distance. Finn moved, and suddenly he was right behind Adrian, his presence a heavy grounding force. He didn't touch him, but the proximity was a connection in itself. "We both know you build walls out of necessity," Finn murmured, his breath warm against Adrian's ear. "You built one around your heart when you left, and used the city and your career as the mortar. But the city is just concrete, Adrian. It doesn't hold against salt water and regret." Adrian finally turned, forcing himself to look Finn in the eye. "I don't regret my career. I love what I do. It is the balance I need." "No," Finn disagreed, gently shaking his head. "Balance isn't about eliminating everything that complicates your life. It's about being able to stand steady even when things are messy. You chose Euro chaos, and you called it balance." He reached out, and this time, the touch was deliberate. Finn gently adjusted the collar of Adrian's shirt, which had been twisted slightly. The small, careful gesture was achingly tender. "You left because you thought you couldn't have both. The music, the ambition, and me." Finn continued, "And you were probably right. Back then, we were too much for each other. We combusted, Adrian, but now, we're different instruments. You're the cello, deep, measured, controlled, and I'm still the piano, all rhythm and reckless harmonies. We make a counterpoint. We don't have to collide anymore." Adrian felt a terrifying crack in his wall. He hadn't realized how desperately lonely he was for this level of understanding. His life in Chicago was praised, respected, but never seen. "I was afraid," Adrian admitted, the words a raw whisper against the cool night air. "If I stayed, I would have become just Finn's boyfriend. I needed to be Adrian, the cellist, on my own terms." "And you are," Finn confirmed immediately. "You are undeniably Adrian, the cellist. You earned it. Now can Adrian, the cellist, also be Adrian, the man who maybe wants a cup of coffee tomorrow morning, without driving away from the sound of the ocean?" Adrian looked out at the turning sea, then back at Finn's open, waiting face. The geometry was no longer parallel lines. It was a complex, interlocking figure, unstable but beautiful. "The estate sale starts at 9, Adrian said, stepping closer to close the small space between them, his heart hammering against his ribs. "It's going to be chaos. I'm going to need help." A slow, incandescent smile spread across Finn's face. "I'm excellent at chaos, Adrian. And I've missed your early mornings. I'll make coffee. I even remember the overpriced grinder you purchased." He did not kiss him. He did not even hug him. Finn simply nodded, his eyes shining with profound connection, and stepped back into his own house. Closing the doors softly, Adrian stood on the porch for a long time, listening to the waves, feeling the unsteady exhilarating promise of balance. The difficult work had just begun. The estate sale was a disaster of organized chaos. Shoppers, looking more like vultures than collectors, swarmed the house, picking over the remnants of Adrian's childhood. The sheer volume of his grandmother's, like the antique silver, the bizarre ceramic dogs, the mountains of brittle lace was suffocating. Finn, true to his word, showed up before 8 a.m. with 2 mugs of strong coffee and an air of unflappable readiness. He moved through the crowd with an easy confidence, directing traffic and even successfully negotiating the price of a taxidermy, my ideal for an elderly woman. Around noon, Adrian retreated to the attic. It was the darkest, dustiest space, reserved for the things nobody wanted, the things Adrian feared most, the untouched remnants of his own teenage years. He found a small, battered, wooden box beneath a pile of old blankets. Inside the box were 2 things: a worn mixtape cassette labeled Doak Haven, August 2007 in Finn's looping handwriting, and a dried, brown corsage from their senior prom. The sight of the corsage's silly, wilted symbol of a hopeful time before they knew ambition would tear them apart hit Adrian with a staggering force. It wasn't the dust or the exhaustion. It was the sharp, specific memory, the Finn fastening, the Boughton iron in that night. His hands slightly trembling, Adrian sat down hard on the floorboards, the wave of grief and regret washing over him so completely that he couldn't breathe. He hadn't cried over Finn when he left. He had replaced tears with scales, emotion with technique. Now 10 years later, the tears came, hot and messy. A minute later, the attic door creaked open. Finn didn't speak, he just stood in the doorway, the light from the hallway outlining his silhouette against the gloom. He saw the box, the cassette, and the defeated curve of Adrian's back. Finn walked over and sat down beside him, his shoulder barely brushing Adrian's. He waited, letting the silence absorb the ragged sounds of Adrian's breathing. "That corsage," Finn finally said, his voice quiet. "I think I stepped on it later that night. Didn't I?" Trying to slow dance to a terrible slow song. Adrian let out a choked, but laugh that was half sob. "You did. You blamed the DJ. I was an excellent blame shifter." Finn agreed. He reached over, not to comfort or to touch, but just to take the dusty wooden box and close the lid gently, shielding Adrian from the weight of the memories. "It's too much," Adrian whispered, running his hands over his face, trying to scrub the emotion away. "It's all here, Finn, everything I left. Everything I tried to forget." "You didn't forget it," Finn corrected softly. "You just placed it in a vault. And now, the vault is open, and all the air pressure is rushing out." Finn lifted his hand, and Adrian braced himself for a platitude or a pat. Instead, Finn's thumb landed right at Adrian's jawline, beneath his ear, where the skin was soft. He tilted Adrian's chin up slightly, his gaze warm and patient. "You don't have to be controlled right now, Adrian," Finn said. "You're safe." And then, Finn closed the remaining distance. The kiss was everything the last 10 years were not hurried, gentle, and profoundly honest. It tasted like coffee and dust and the sharp relief of being found after being lost. It wasn't the aggressive, hungry kiss of teenagers desperate to seize a moment before it vanished. It was the slow, weighted press of 2 women recognizing that the connection between them was not a memory, but a permanent, vital structure. Adrian felt the 10-year wall he had built crumble completely. He leaned into the touch, letting his rigid posture give way, gripping the fabric of Finn's sweater with a desperate knee he hadn't known he possessed. The cello, the career, the ambition, it all faded into background noise. In that moment, Adrian was simply Adrian, and Finn was his anchor. When Finn finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against Adrian's, their shared breath mingling. "This," Finn murmured, his voice thick. "This is what balance feels like, Adrian, not running, just holding steady." Adrian nodded, unable to speak. The first true, uncontrolled smile in years stretching across his face. The attic was still dusty, the estate sale still raging downstairs, and the choices of his future were still impossibly complex. But for the first time, he wasn't standing alone against the chaos. He had Finn, and that was the truest note he'd ever played.